Hi everyone. So you've probably seen this story in the media. This is the story of how the wife of a US diplomat, as the BBC are calling it, look, diplomatic immunity, crushed it. So they're calling it still the wife of a US diplomat who was involved in a head-on collision with that young man there, 19-year-old Harry Dunn, that killed him. He was on his bike in Northamptonshire, doing nothing wrong, and police have said this crash happened as the result of the driver of the car that killed that young man, 19 years old. The driver of the car, Anne Sakulis, was on the wrong side of the road, an American. Okay, so I touched on this in my live stream the other night, but the crash happened near RAF Croughton, I think it's called, in Northamptonshire on the 27th of August, and police questioned the woman and released her pending further investigations after she promised she wouldn't leave the country, this wife of this diplomat solely. Sakulis, who the BBC, as I've just showed you, says enjoys diplomatic immunity, unsurprisingly buggered off back to America. Quick smart when she said to the police that she wouldn't. Now, our Prime Minister Boris Johnson is understandably concerned about this turn of events. Here he is. Oops, here he is.
Well, I think everybody's sympathies are very much with the family of Harry Dunn, and our condolences to them for their tragic loss. And no, I must answer you directly. I do not think that it can be right to use the process of diplomatic immunity for this type of purpose. And I hope that Anne Sakulis will come back and will engage properly with the processes of law as they're carried out in this country. And that's a point that we've raised or are raising today with the American ambassador here in the UK. And
the American ambassador's name, by the way, is Woody Johnson. I know this is a tragic story, but I'm sorry, you've got to laugh at Woody Johnson. That's just Dick Tallywhacker, you know.
And I hope it will be resolved very shortly. And, to anticipate a question that you might want to raise, if we can't resolve it, then, of course, I will be raising it myself personally with the White House.
So there you go. He's going to raise it personally with the White House. Bojo's response to the injustice of a young man being killed and then the other party involved in it absconding under a cloud of diplomatic immunity is to hope Miss Sakulis will return someday, as long as she's not too busy or she has other immediate plans that are too much of a hassle to reschedule, and she can get the double air miles on the way back, I'm being hyperbolic, but you get the point I'm trying to make. The Americans are reported to say they believe the base is an annex, and I got that from GCHQ's mouthpiece, The Guardian, so who knows how much truth is that. Here's the kicker for this whole story, and even though the BBC is still saying, this is a diplomat and the wife of the diplomat, it seems they may be mistaken in their reporting. In the same way that they were mistaken in their reporting that Saddam definitely had weapons of mass destruction. The same way that they were mistaken in their reporting that Assad gassed his own people just before he won the war, making sure that people would bomb him. Because Craig Murray, the excellent Craig Murray, has released an article, has done an article on this. And he says this. I'm going to come to the update at the end, because the update's of importance as well. But he says there is no Jonathan Sakulis on the official diplomatic list. Neither Sakulis nor his wife has any right to claim diplomatic immunity under the Vienna Convention. Article 31 of the Vienna Convention states that a diplomatic agent shall enjoy immunity from the criminal jurisdiction of the receiving state. Article 37 extends this privilege to family members. Okay. Jonathan Sakulis, though, does not hold and has never held a diplomatic rank. He has never been a member of staff of a diplomatic mission All those with diplomatic rank appear in the diplomatic list. And he links through to it. That list also includes some attachés who do not have diplomatic rank, depending on the type of attaché, but there is but there is nobody with diplomatic rank not in the list. Diplomatic immunity, remember they're still saying in the BBC. Jonathan Sekoulas does not have and has never had any entitlement to diplomatic immunity in international law, and obviously by proxy, therefore, neither has his wife, who was driving on the wrong side of the road and killed that 19-year-old lad who was doing nothing wrong and had his whole life in front of him. Sekoulas works as an NSA technical officer at the Communications Interceptions Post at RAF Crofton. I don't know how it's pronounced. His role is support to the interceptions and communications of British citizens. So the NSA has staff here fronting the spying on British citizens, while GCHQ has staff in the US fronting the spying on US citizens, and the polite fiction is that the results are transmitted back over the Atlantic to the US or the UK respectively before being shared with the partner intelligence agency. I'm assuming he means the Five Eyes there. None of which has anything to do with diplomacy. None of it. This is none of it. This is a spying network. This is the Five Eyes. This is what they do. This is where they're collecting the information. They have to collect it. They have to have centres where that information is stored and sifted through, and they go through all your porn searches. I don't know. Sekoulas must be the subject of a DSMA notice, says Craig Murray, given that all mainstream media are referring to him constantly as a diplomat. They are constantly doing it. You saw the BBC just falling over themselves at the moment to say diplomat over and over again, when they all know that this is not true. The irony is, of course, that if Sekoulas actually was a real diplomat, the US would very probably have waived the diplomatic immunity of his wife, as the issues around his presence and function would be much less sensitive. If he was just a diplomat, the America would just go, yeah, no problem. She killed a kid. You know, okay, she killed a kid. Send her back. Have a trial. You know, whatever it is. But because it's a spy and it's an NSA guy doing data collection on the British, the irony is, of course, that if Sekoulas actually was a real diplomat, the US would very probably have waived the diplomatic immunity of his wife, as the issues around his presence and function would be much less sensitive. The UK has no Vienna Convention obligation to acknowledge the immunity of Sekoulas' wife. Contrary to all reporting to date, what does apparently exist between the UK and US is a secret bilateral agreement to GCHQ and NSA staff as if they had diplomatic immunity. That is not the same thing as the Vienna Convention protection under international law. I cannot conceive the grief of Harry Dunn's parents. Neither can I. But I do hope that they are not deceived by the pretense of intervention, in this case by Johnson and Raab. I have a feeling that has already happened, because they've come out and they're not happy after meeting Dominic Raab today. I am not at all convinced as a matter of law. Craig Murray continues and says that the government has the power to grant by bilateral treaty or otherwise immunity from criminal prosecution to foreign nationals, plainly outside the provisions of the Vienna Convention. This should be tested by the courts. Brilliant by Craig Murray. Just brilliant. Support independent media. This is why it's important. Support independent media. So this woman is not protected by diplomatic immunity, it seems. She is merely the wife of some NSA geezer who works for a US spy base in Northamptonshire, collecting information on you and me, probably. Hand her over, please, America. Hand her over. I seem to remember Sajid Javid, Theresa May, and seemingly every Tory in the House of Commons about 8 months ago, screaming nobody is above the law at the top of their lungs just after they dragged Julian Assange out of the Ecuadorian embassy I remember them saying it over and over and over again. Nobody is above the law, they kept saying. Do you remember them saying that? I do. Dominic Raab, I'm sure he's one of the ones that said it, and he met with the grieving parents this afternoon who are not happy with the meeting. And so far, I've seen absolutely nothing that says to me that this woman will ever face justice or the inside of a court or anything. This is not a diplomat. This woman is not entitled to protection under the Vienna Convention. I don't give a shit how many, little deals you've got with the Americans. She doesn't have diplomatic immunity. Stop saying it. RAF Croughton is not an annex of the American embassy. This is the wife of a US spy working at a US base on our soil. Our own soil, who forgot that we drive on the left here in the UK and drove 400 metres on the wrong side of the road after coming out of the base that her husband works at as an NSA spy and hit a 19-year-old kid on a motorbike head on, killing him. A young man with his entire life ahead of him, gone in the blink of an eye, having done nothing wrong whatsoever because the wife of a US spy wasn't paying attention to what she was doing or where she was whilst driving a Volvo XC90, which I know from personal experience is built like a damn tank. That kid would have been a fly on the windshield to that car. If this was you or me that did that, we would have been charged with death by dangerous driving in a fucking nanosecond. So how can we take anything these lying bastards right now say seriously when they declare this sort of shit when they want to imprison somebody for being a great journalist?
Mr. Speaker, this goes to show that in the United Kingdom, no one is above the law.
And there's no one in this country that is above the law.
And I think no one is above the law.
No one is above the law. No one is above the law. No one is above the law.
If nobody is above the law, great. We're all equal. But they let somebody leave the country and face no charges for a clear case of death by dangerous driving because she's the wife of an NSA spy doing NSA spy shit on our own soil, probably against our own people. She's more equal than we are, isn't she? She's married to a spy. They're more equal than us. They're protected. When the Americans tell us to jump, we say, how high? How high, master? Ooh! They request, mate, is there a chance you can make your Royal Navy hijack a tanker containing another sovereign country's oil, in an act of piracy? No problem, Boris is saying. No problem whatsoever. Do you mind awfully, little Blighty, if you submit a submit a journalist to mental torture on your own soil for almost a decade and then throw him in your Guantanamo Bay for proving that we are all war criminals? No problem! Let's get him out of there. But if we ask the US to send back a US citizen who fled our shores because she was implicated in a possible case of death by dangerous driving, and they're like that, screw you, Britain. Screw you. Don't you dare let the public aware of what our spying operation is doing. This special relationship that the United States and the United Kingdom have, it's a little bit one-sided. Don't you think? This woman killed a kid and will never, ever face the inside of the court. And why? Because she's married to a spy. She's more equal than we are. Because the UK government, the UK establishment care more about their illegal spy operations that they are doing illegally on their own citizens than they do about the rule of law or justice. As for our journalists, by the way, who didn't uncover this. This infuriates me. This makes me even angrier, this does. This is the update from Craig Murray. Update. Since I published this article, the mainstream media, including at least Sky News and The Guardian, I've seen both of these. I've read the whole entire Guardian article. I can't stand spending more than 5 seconds on that website, but they've started to report that Tsakoulis did not have diplomatic immunity. This is a massive reversal in the mainstream media line, although to date, none have published that he works for the NSA or explained that the NSA GCHQ relationship. Well, the Guardian wouldn't, let's face it. There's no way the Guardian wouldn't. They are GCHQ. Whatever's going to come out of them, just forget it. It's going to be PR. The mainstream media are all quoting the lawyer Mark Stevens rather than this blog. Craig Murray was the one who broke this story. But they're all crediting this Mark Stevens guy as the source of the information. I would gently note that I can so far find no evidence of Stevens pointing out Tsakoulis is not on the diplomatic list until some hours after I broke the story, and that when he gave radio interviews yesterday, Stevens was unaware of the fact. Ultimately, however, he says, it does not matter that I am not credited. What matters is my lead lead has in practice been followed, and there is now a much stronger point of pressure. This is why you should. He doesn't really care. He said, okay, I'll put it out there. Listen, just make you aware they're crediting somebody else, but I'm not that bothered. I'm glad the story's out. This is why you support independent media, because they've got morals.